All right, let's clear this garage. Start a pile here for donations, one over here for recycling, and one more over here for trash. Hang on, what are you doing?
Recycling?
We may need that paint one day, and that can't be recycled.
First, this can looks older than me. And second, paintcare.org says you can.
Paintcare.org. Let me see. Oh, and there's a drop-off site close by. And it's free? Nice.
Dad, no.
Timmons of Long Beach.
The summer sales event is going on right now at the all-new Timmons Subaru dealership, where you'll find a selection of new Subarus featuring amazing finance rates. 4 new 2021 Subaru models are now offering 0 APR financing. This is a limited time offer, so act now during Timmons Subaru Summer Sales Event.
Timmons of Long Beach.
TimmonsSubaru.com.
It's time for the Tiki and Tierney NFL Training Camp Two-A-Days as we visit all 32 NFL camps to preview the upcoming season.
Buffalo Bills, 13-3, first in the AFC East. The Bills ended the Patriots' stranglehold on the division, winning the East for the first time since 1995. Josh Allen emerged as one of the elite QBs in the NFL and did not disappoint in the playoffs with a few strong showings before falling to the Chiefs in the AFC title game.
A lot to learn from, a lot to grow from. As a team, we'll use it. We'll use it the right way. We're by no means done. Next year is going to be, I'm super excited already and focusing everything that I have towards trying to become better and trying to be the best version of myself and the best quarterback for this team.
Buffalo added first-round defensive end Gregory Rousseau to an already stout defense, but can Allen continue his meteoric rise, or was he a one-hit wonder?
And to help us break it down, we're bringing in the smartest player on most offensive linemen, former center, former first-round pick for the Buffalo Bills. That would be Eric Wood. Eric, welcome to the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Tiki?
I cannot complain at all. So we saw Josh Allen just take this meteoric step last year, and being up close in person, did you see it coming?
Honestly, through the first 2 seasons he had in the NFL, he was the last-ranked quarterback in the NFL for completion percentage, but the highlight plays were there. So with Josh Allen, you always knew that if he could eliminate some of the bad plays, if he could just make some free throws out on the field, take the easy throws, that he could have tremendous success in the league because he showed off a ton of arm strength, a ton of athleticism and playmaking ability. And what the Bills did last year was, through my career in Buffalo and then even early in Sean McDermott's time with the Buffalo Bills, they were primarily a run-based team. One of the highest run percentages in the NFL. They flipped the script completely last year. Give Josh Allen the reins of this offense. Let him air it out. They bring in Stephon Diggs, which they already had Cole Beasley. They draft Gabriel Davis last year, and then this year they had Emmanuel Sanders. And so adding those weapons, opening up the offense, really allowed Josh Allen to flourish. I mean, I'd be lying if I said I thought in year 4, year 3, he'd be runner-up for the MVP. But you know what? That's a guy that spends a lot of time and effort trying to perfect his craft, and it's paid off for him.
Yeah, no, you can see it. 37 touchdowns he had last year and only 10 interceptions. Brian Daboll did a great job with him, almost 70% completion percentage. Something just came down, Eric. I don't know if you've heard enough about this and give some more details, but there's a handful of players that are close contact COVID right now, including Cole Beasley, who are, I guess they're going to be unavailable for some amount of time. How should we process that news?
Yeah, that's a tough deal, and that's the reality of 2021. If you choose not to get vaccinated with the protocols that the league put in place, you're always at risk of missing time. And these guys are trying to make as educated of a decision, I guess, as they can on this. But, Tiki, from being around rosters, there's guys that can transcend maybe going with the flow with an NFL organization. But if you're a role player, if you're not one of those probably top 5 elite guys on the team, man, it's going to be tough to make an NFL roster, I feel like, this year if you're going to remain unvaccinated, just because with the protocols in place, you could have one of your key guys. You only get 45 guys in uniform on Sundays, 53 on an active roster. You need everybody available.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And it's not necessarily about, a vax a vaccination debate. I mean, I'll ask you a question about that in a second, but it's more just about if you get close contact and you're not vaccinated, we lose you for 10 days. That's a long time, man. And speaking of that, we saw bickering, I don't even know what to call it, between Cole Beasley and Jerry Hughes. Deion Dawkins, who almost died of COVID, he weighed in on this. Is that lingering over this locker room, or is it water under the bridge?
I think it's becoming water under the bridge, and I think the Jerry Hughes, Cole Beasley thing was maybe blown a touch out of proportion. But anytime anything hits the media like that, there's something going on there.
Yeah.
And this has been an issue in Buffalo. And Cole Beasley's been one of the most outspoken in the entire NFL in regards to the vaccine, and I think a lot of it's just being forced to do something as opposed to maybe a super strong stance against it. But yeah, when you look at how talented this Bills team is, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have just built a monster in Buffalo. You would hate to have something like this derail the season.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. All right, we're breaking down the Buffalo Bills, our training camp two-a-days with Eric Wood, who's a Bills analyst, former offensive lineman, center for the Bills for 8 seasons. And, last year had to feel outstanding. The Patriots have dominated this division forever. Around Buffalo, around the team, last season how did it feel from your perspective calling these games and breaking down what was, an epic turnaround for this team relative to the Patriots in the division?
It was exciting. I mean, I wish Tom Brady would have headed down to Tampa while I was still playing, and maybe we could have won the division once while I was playing. Instead, we didn't have tremendous success against Tom Brady and the Patriots, but with all the opt-outs in New England as well last year, that hurt their squad. I mean, it is what it is. This year, especially after Bill Belichick had to watch Tom Brady hoist the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the year, Bill Belichick's going to be coaching his tail off. He went out and spent money in free agency for the first time since I can remember.
Yep.
So they brought in a lot of guys through free agency. It'll be interesting to see how they roll at quarterback. And Mac Jones has looked impressive in the preseason, but, I mean, shoot, playing in a preseason game, not necessarily against starters from another team, that's probably worse competition than he even faced in practice at Alabama.
Yeah,
and so for
true.
Mac Jones, that's not quite the step up, and you wonder if he can do it during the regular season. And what's interesting to me is how different the offenses would look depending on who the starter is between Cam Newton and Mac Jones. I played through a quarterback competition one year in training camp where it was between Matt Castle and Tyrod Taylor. When you have conflicting styles of play at quarterback between the two guys that are competing for the job, it doesn't make it easy. There's only so much practice time, especially with no two-a-days anymore.
Yeah.
There's only so much time you could practice. So to me, I would imagine Bill would have to make a decision on this soon just so that they can hammer home what they're going to want to do schematically on offense this year.
Yeah, that's a great part. The last thing you want is to have dual identities, which basically is conflicting identities, because if something happens, then all of a sudden everybody's on the wrong page. Now, we talked about the offense, and the skill position players are outstanding there. You brought them all up. Stephon Diggs and Emmanuel Sanders is now there, and Cole Beasley, who was both of those guys were all pros, Diggs and Beasley. But defensively, it was middle of the road a little bit. Outstanding secondary, as we all know, between Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. But Gregory Rousseau, first-round draft pick this year. Ed Oliver, first-round draft pick a couple of years ago. Where are they at in getting after the quarterback, which, as you know, is really the way that defenses can be disruptive?
Yeah, I mean, basically when I look at the Bills draft the last 2 years, last year their first pick was A.J. Epinesa. The previous year was Ed Oliver as their first selection in the draft. This year, their first 2 picks were pass rushers in Greg Rousseau and then Boogie Basham out of Wake Forest. When you look at how Tampa Bay was able to beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl, and everybody in the AFC is looking up at Kansas City with the success that they've had with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, you look at it, and if you blitz Patrick Mahomes consistently to try and get home to the quarterback, he's going to torch you. They have too much speed. They have too much talent and space. So what did Todd Bowles, who has the highest blitz percentage of any defensive coordinator over the last 6 years, he doesn't blitz at all, and he let his defensive line tee off on what was an injured Kansas City offensive line. But that I think gave the Bills an indicator that we need to add pass rushers, and that's potentially how we can get over the hump. And through 2 weeks of the preseason, in limited reps, Greg Rousseau has looked phenomenal. 2 sacks through 2 games with probably only 6 or 7 pass rush attempts total for him. So he looks to fit the bill to reward the Bills for what they invested in him in a first-round draft pick.
Yeah, no, it looks like that. I mean, he didn't play last year, so it was kind of like a one-year resume for him down at the University of Miami, but he was a freak, and I'm glad he's showing that now. Eric Wood, Bills analyst, is joining us here for our Buffalo Bills training camp two-a-days. You talk about Sean McDermott a lot, and I think we liked him as soon as he got the head coaching job. Coming from Carolina, he's defensive-minded. He's bringing the right mindset and getting these guys focused on the little steps before they take the big ones. Well, last year, as we mentioned, Eric, it was a big step for the Bills. How are they managing the new expectations of this organization, franchise, fan base, etc.?
Yeah, from playing with Sean, everything about him is about the process. It's all culture, and Sean's going to stick to that. And it became a pretty big national story, but I'm not sure if you saw where Brian Daboll had the entire offense stand up, and he said, sit down if you've ever been cut or traded in your NFL career, and everybody sits down except Josh. Or sorry, if you weren't a first-round draft pick and you've never been cut or traded, everybody but Josh Allen sits down. And then he said, Josh, how many scholarships did you have coming out of high school? He said 0. He said, you sit down too. And so they're doing everything they can to make sure that they keep that same chip on their shoulder that they've had the last few years. As nationally, for so long, the Bills were kind of a laughingstock. And then, with the stability that they have now with Sean McDermott, the GM, Brandon Beane, the ownership group with the Pagulas, they have so much stability, to create long-term success. They want them to keep that chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to approach it. You take the guys who have achieved a lot and have had success and then break them down a little bit and keeps them hungry. Yep. It's actually really smart. I don't think there's any meat behind this, but the whole idea that the Bills might move, the NFL comes out and talks about this as well. We need to keep the Bills in Buffalo. Getting a new stadium is obviously paramount. I mean, I haven't been up there in years, and it hasn't changed. So I know it's time. Right. I know it's time for a new stadium. Where are they at in that process? Is the thought of moving even contemplated up front or up top, I should say, with the Bills?
Man, you would hope that there wouldn't be, and just because that city revolves around the Bills organization, and they have such tremendous support up there. It's one of the most fun atmospheres in the NFL, especially if the Bills are winning. The fan base is so passionate, and it's kind of blown up with this whole Bills Mafia thing and all the coverage that they've got over the last few years. But the support is tremendous up there. So when you look at the stadium, structurally, it's not going to last that long. So you can't even say, hey, we're gonna polish this thing one more time. They need a new stadium. I believe a lot of what's been asked for a fully publicly funded stadium, and hey, there's the potential of moving. I think a lot of it's a negotiation tactic.
Yeah,
and none of it's coming straight from the Pagulas' mouth.
The Bills aren't leaving Buffalo, and I know that they have to use negotiating tactics. Maybe Austin, and then we have Eric back now, but they were talking about Austin and all these faraway places. I mean, the Bills Mafia, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, they would revolt. They would burn down forget the city. They'd burn down the state if the Bills left.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And, and yes, there's much bigger cities out there in the country that are just pumping revenue through the city. A city like Austin is such a hot town nationally right now, but it truly would be a shame if there even became a real threat of moving the organization, that fan base would definitely be offended.
Yeah, no, they definitely would. Before I let you go, we know Josh Allen's the man, but Mitchell Trubisky is there as a backup. He looked pretty good last weekend. We crushed him for 3 years, 4 years in Chicago. He actually looks pretty good now. Is it just a change of scenery, or is it the staff and the environment that he's in now that's making him feel less, I don't know, under the heel of everybody?
Yeah, I mean, he got to go back to Chicago and put on a show last week.
Yeah, he did.
And I kind of anticipated that Brian Daboll would let him run the offense. The week before, they only give him 2 pass attempts. They're in the huddle the entire time. The Bills run a ton of no-huddle offense. So last week, they let him run out of the no-huddle, and they let him really show off back in front of that home crowd in Chicago. But when you look at Mitch Trubisky, he's a guy that had some success, takes the Bears to the playoffs. He got some time to develop, and then all you've heard from him recently is when he spoke to the media about his time so far in Buffalo, about how he feels appreciated for the first time. He feels supported for the first time. And I don't want to make too big of a situation about it, but I do know that the Bills fan base, the Bills organization is extremely excited, even though it's only a one-year deal, to allow him to come in and be the backup there for a year.
Yeah, no, I mean, sometimes that's all it takes, being appreciated, and it actually brings a lot more out of you. Eric, appreciate you hopping on, detailing the Bills as they head into this 2021 season. Good luck to you, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. Anytime, brother.
Be good.
On Pod Save the World, we want to be your cheat sheet for global events. My name is Tommy Vitor, and each week, my co-host Ben Rhodes and I break down the biggest stories from around the world. Ben and I both worked on President Obama's national security staff, and we'll introduce you to the activists, politicians, and journalists who can help us understand what's going on around the world, what it means for the United States, and what it's like being inside the White House Situation Room during a crisis.
Listen on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your pods.
The COVID-19 pandemic showed us how a microscopic virus could upend our lives. There is so much out there that we need to understand, but for every threat, there are heroes working at the edges of science and policy to protect us. I'm Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, former Detroit Health Director and host of Crooked Media's America Dissected. Every episode, I talk to the doctors, scientists, culture makers, and policy leaders who are working out new ways to protect us against our biggest threats. New episodes of America Dissected every Tuesday. Listen on Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
What's at stake in the September 14th recall? It's a matter of life and death. With Delta surging, Governor Newsom is protecting California, requiring vaccination for healthcare workers and school employees. Governor Newsom is fighting every day to ensure our state comes back stronger than ever. But on September 14th, Republicans are trying to seize power by recalling Newsom and undoing all his work protecting our communities. The leading Republican candidate promoted dangerous anti-vaccine conspiracy theories during the pandemic. And he'd eliminate all vaccine mandates on day one, which could force schools to close and threaten our recovery. That's why voting no on the recall is so important. Stop the spread. Return your ballot or vote in person by September 14th. Protect California by voting no on the Republican recall. Ad paid for by Stop the Republican Recall of Governor Newsom. Committee major funding by Reed Hastings and SEIU Local 15.